Hey everyone, Nick Manning here, and today I'm going to be talking about my experience developing full stack Flutter apps on Windows versus Mac versus Linux and the differences between the two. So, full stack Flutter, first of all, if you don't know, it's the developing Flutter apps in the front end and also Dart in the back end. So, just full stack. Dart is used with Flutter, but you can also write backend services with Dart. I haven't covered Flutter Web yet, but that'll be in a different video. But that could also be full stack Flutter development. So that's that. I basically code on a Windows PC. I have a pretty powerful gaming slash film editing PC at home, and I just also use it for development. I also use a Mac laptop, a kind of 5-year old MacBook Pro. So I do Flutter development on that machine, and it's also great. I've also developed Flutter apps on Linux, pure Linux, like in a VM using VMware Player. I'll go into that also in this video. So first, the Windows experience, the software I use, and what you're going to need to probably write full stack Flutter apps. So first off, I use for Windows Visual Studio Code because I don't know, I like it. It's great. I don't need any other IDE. Android Studio is just kind of ugly to me. It's just I don't know. I just don't like an Android Studio a lot. And what else? I yeah, install the Flutter plugin for Visual Studio Code. That's really it. That's all I use for now. For emulators, I use Android Studio's emulators. So I download Android Studio. I don't use it as an IDE. I install the just one of the emulators that it comes with. So an Android emulator. And in the past, for like I've had less powerful PC, I've used another type of emulator that's completely non-related to Android Studio. It's a standalone third-party product called Genymotion. The Genymotion emulators are just less resource intensive, so that's another option. The other thing I use for Windows to develop full-stack Flutter apps is WSL. WSL stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux. And it is just, you go to the Microsoft Store, you download it, and it gives you basically Linux, specifically Ubuntu, in just a virtualized environment. No Linux desktop, but it's just it gives you installs a Linux for you, and when you start it up, it gives you a command prompt, and you get everything you need out of Linux, and it has seamless integration with your Windows file system and Linux. So, if you open some code in WSL using Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio Code has deep integration with WSL, so you can have some code in Linux on your Windows PC, but you can edit it with Visual Studio Code, which is pretty awesome. So if that doesn't make sense to you, or if you're new to Linux, that's fine. I'm going to be creating a lot of videos for just that topic alone. But what I install there is a database. So I use Postgres. That's a type of database, kind of like MySQL. And I install my own version of Dart there because a lot of backend development, the tooling just works with Linux-based systems. So macOS is Linux-based. You can install it on WSL. That's Linux, and there's just certain tooling like that you're going to get out of Linux that you're not going to get on Windows. So I highly recommend that for backend development. Just trust me on that. The videos I'm going to create are not going to be very tooling intensive, like very nitty gritty CI/CD, like complex setups or anything like that. But still, the whole developer experience in developing backend apps is just a lot easier with Linux. So that's generally my setup for Windows. It works very smoothly. Mac OS, I don't really need to cover because everything works very smoothly on Mac OS. I will say I use for backend development with Dart, I use the same version of Dart that already comes with Flutter on Mac OS. I don't have to install a separate version. So that's great. And I install Postgres as well on Mac. There's some great Mac apps I can recommend later for that. And that's it. The third option I want to cover in this video before I finish is VMware Player. So VMware Player is a third-party application. It's free, and it just lets you install Linux, any version of Linux or any operating system for that matter that you want, and it runs it in a window. That's it. So I can, in theory, install Linux, like Ubuntu, for example. That's a certain version of Linux, and I can install all the Flutter tooling I talked about on that Linux instance, and I get a desktop, Linux desktop. It runs in a window, so I can install Android Studio, an emulator, Visual Studio Code, all in that operating system, and it just is just running in its own virtualized environment. So the only downside with that is that the file system access is slower. Things are a bit more sluggish, and it's kind of overkill in my opinion these days. Like you don't really need to go ahead and do that unless you really really like the Linux desktop, and I do. If you want to try certain versions of Linux and a Linux desktop and everything you get out of that, my two favorites is XFCE and Kubuntu. So not Ubuntu, but Kubuntu, and that's just like a better user experience for Ubuntu. It's KDE Desktop plus Ubuntu. So if you want to get into Linux and you don't know anything about it and you don't know what I'm talking about right now, just don't worry about all these terms. I can create some videos for that, but I'm just giving you the kind of not my download on what I've used in the past. And basically, developing full stack Flutter apps on Windows or Mac is a great experience, and I've absolutely no problems with it. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and see you in the next video.